What's up, y'all? We want to welcome you back to the Elevate podcast with Kevin and Joseph. But today, it's not Kevin and Joseph.
No, it's not. It's Kevin, and Joseph. What's up, Kev? How you doing, bro?
Good to be here amongst legends here.
Oh,
Conference.
please, bro. Legends. I got here a year and a half ago, bro.
Well, you guys are doing some good work, man. Yeah, look at the setup. This is actually kind of nice, and you guys are doing. You're putting in work, and it shows.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.
We definitely appreciate it. But no. When we talk about legends, man, we got to talk about the legend right here.
Yes,
the
legend,
Chai Man
the
himself.
Chai Man himself, the little brown boy.
Happy brown boy.
Happy little brown boy.
Happy little brown boy. I'm sorry. Kevin Wilson, bro. We are just, man, we're so stoked that you said yes and that you are here today. And for the people who don't know you, give us a little intro. Give them a little intro of who you are, where you come, where you're pastoring at, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Kevin Wilson, and I was born in Sri Lanka. I lived there till I was about 12 years old, then moved to the Middle East for a little bit, and I came to the States when I was 18. And the reason why I say this, and it's just so intuitive at this point, when people ask me, like, give me the introduction, I just have to tell that story, because that probably would give some context behind like the things that I might say later on. But so I'm here in California, San Diego, California specifically, and pastoring at the Oceanside Seventh-day Adventist Church. The official title is Associate Pastor, but that means that you're doing everything that the senior pastor does not want to do.
Yeah.
So you already know
we all know what that's like.
So you guys know
I feel
what
that, bro.
Yeah, but under that title, I'm youth. So high school plus young adults, and I also teach at the elementary school there.
Oh,
so
I didn't
once
know
a
that.
week. Yeah, so that's kind of.
You teach what, 4th grade, 5th grade?
I teach 7th and 8th.
7th and 8th, okay.
Yeah, once
Wow.
a week I do Bible and leadership and those type of things. Yeah, because we have like a school that's attached to our church. So yeah, it's been fun. 4.5 years, married to one wife. And
Not many wives.
Not many
One
wives.
wife. Thank
Way
you
to
for
point
clearing that up,
thank
bro.
you, bro. I needed that clarification.
thank you. Just to want to clear everything. But no kids. But we have two fur children, 2 cats. They take up all of our time.
Of course.
Yes.
But we love it. They're great. So that's kind of the snapshot.
There you go.
Awesome,
Love it, man.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, you know what? Why don't you give us a little snapshot then? Because we know that, you've been during this pandemic, you kind of took it on your shoulders or I feel like it actually kind of probably just popped on you, right? And then it kind of became its own thing when it comes to TikTok and social media and all that. If you can just like briefly let us know how that whole thing happened.
Before that, though, it's one of my greatest moments, I think, is when we get the recorder, right, for the Pacific Union.
Oh, yeah, you
And
see
then-
his
And then literally
face.
I get the recorder out of the mailbox, and I just see Kevin there, and I'm like, oh, my goodness,
This is when you
bro.
knew he made it.
Yeah, I was like, he made it, bro. He made it. It's done.
Oh my goodness!
I love that picture, by the way, bro.
Oh.
That was fantastic. I know you're already famous and stuff,
Yeah.
but like when you were on the recorder, bro, for me it just set the tone, bro.
It wasn't even TikTok that
It wasn't
made it. It was the
TikTok.
moment you came up on the recorder. That's
Yeah.
when we knew you were solidified.
Yeah, that's the milestone of success,
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
Once you make the record. And for those of you who are watching or listening, the
Yeah.
recorder is how do you define the recorder?
It's like the magazine that gives like updates on each conference within the
Advent
Pacific
Church,
Union,
yeah.
which is
Right.
our conference where we work Southeastern, California, Arizona, Nevada. Those. So when he was on there, then I was like, wow, Kevin Wilson.
Yeah, so the funny story behind that is like they reached out to me to do a story on the TikTok because the TikTok was blowing up. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But so they asked me questions, and I thought it was going to be like this little side piece in the corner of like the magazine. I had no idea that my face would be plastered on the front page because everybody and their mother started texting me, bro, is this you? And like some people who have never seen me, and it was like, yo, is this like what happened to you? Like you actually, this is crazy. Like you look like Jesus. And I'm like, because I had short hair back then, but
Oh, man.
no, it's interesting. It looks like they've run out of stuff to talk about. But,
Oh, dude, no, it was great, bro. I loved it. But yeah, as Kevin was saying, tell us more about the TikTok, man, and everything that's happened since,
Yeah. So I think it was around February of 2020. I was, it was the pandemic, and I was going through a time where I was just like trying to figure out ministry, trying to figure out how to best use my time, and I decided, let me just kind of put a little bit more effort into my social media work. And at the time, I was running a YouTube channel, was doing fairly well, and I was also running an Instagram. Instagram was just for like family and friends, nothing crazy. And one of the things that I used to do was to actually document my chai making process through Instagram stories. And it was during that time where TikTok was, everybody was talking about TikTok, and my youth were talking about it. Everybody's talking about these memes and from TikTok, and I was just like, what is going on? And for me, since I was like 11 or 12 years old, like I've always been interested in mediums and of communication, especially particularly communicating online, and so that's why I got into blogging when I first started creating. And so I had a blog.
Yeah, wow, that's cool, man.
Yeah, so I had a blog. I started writing stuff there, and I just love just creating something and just put it out there. So when the YouTube became a thing, I started a YouTube channel, and when Twitter became a thing, and I was like, okay, let me just start posting tweets. So just wanted to experiment different things, and so TikTok happened. I was just like, you know what, I just do not have the time to go on TikTok because I'm already putting effort into YouTube. But I wanted to just test it out. So I stitched up the story, this chai making story, put a voiceover over it. It was really, really shoddy. And I made a 1-minute video, put it on TikTok. Nothing happened for another couple first 2 days. But then something crazy happened. The notifications started to blow up. And I was like, what's going on? And there was just these comments and likes and follows. And it was just racking up like a ton of followers. And at the time I had about, maybe 100, just basically youth and family and friends, I wasn't posting anything at all, just like some devotional content here and there. But within a week, I went from like 200 to 20,000.
Oh my goodness.
And I was just like, what the heck is going on here?
How did that feel?
Yeah, it felt really crazy, man. Because that was the first time in a very, very long time that I had a ton of attention at one time, So I just, looking at the comments, I was like, what, people are actually wanting like legitimate chai content. And then I kind of did some research on the app, and I was like, wait, nobody else is doing this? Like I thought there was all the chai people are here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nobody. There was 0 people. And I was like, okay, well, let me just experiment with putting more chai content. And so that's what I did, man. I started putting more content, and the algorithm, it was during the time where the TikTok algorithm was at its peak. It was kind of like this tidal wave. And, a rising wave, lifts all ships. And that's kind of what happened to a bunch of different creators that got on to TikTok during that time. And so everything was hyped up. TikTok started to really pump up my content, even the content that was just like not so good. So within a couple of months, it hit 50, 60,000. And I kept posting more TikTok content. And right now, it's been, a year and a half, almost, year and a couple of months. Yeah, I'm almost at 200K, and it's crazy. It's really, it's really crazy situation,
Sorry,
man.
That is very.
Yeah, so the TikTok is basically, the overall vision behind it is to teach people how to make authentic homemade chai and use it as a meaningful practice in their lives. So that's the tagline, that's the vision, that's the big picture goal. And because of that, like, the audience that I have is pretty eclectic, it's pretty diverse. A majority of my audience is actually not Christian, not Adventist, and but I've always kept either pastor or SDA pastor in my bios, both on my TikTok and my Instagram, because I wanted to see if people would stick around with that idea. And I guess there's now this amazing community of chai loving humans, man. It's kind of crazy.
That's amazing, bro.
Yeah. And slowly everyone's growing in that opinion of staying away from that chai tea latte and moving into that real authentic chai.
Real chai, bro.
Yeah. You gotta preach them the good news, man. So.
So what I find really interesting, I think, and this can be a good segue into the conversation, is, your handle, right, is cross-culture Christian. And I think that's really, really important, and I think we should definitely be able to zero in on that, and seeing how, kind of learning from you, and then also being able to chime in as well and figuring out how is it that, most people aren't Christian. Most people for sure aren't Adventists, right? And so I guess the question is how can you be a believer, right? Have faith and still, find ways to make a difference within the culture that we currently live in.
Yeah. And I think even before, Kevin, let's define what is culture, bro.
Yeah,
what are the
absolutely.
culture that you are talking about right now? Like when you say culture, there's ethnic culture, right? There's societal culture as well within that, and I think right now we're trying to go a little bit more on societal culture, right? And that means like for example, how you dress, the music you listen to, what are you saying, right? For example, I just said sheesh, right? And that is something that's societal culture right there. And all of that is under that umbrella. I think that's kind of where we want to go right now.
Yeah, no, these are great thoughts, and I think, culture is such a broad concept. You're absolutely right. And in my mind, when I think about culture, I'm going really basic and probably even more broader than we need to. Is that it's essentially a system of shared values that's practiced by a group or groups of people, united under a similar goals or similar priorities, right? And cross-culture Christian for me was a brand that I always had, even before the TikTok happened, and it means like a couple of different things. And so I am a cross-cultured person, meaning like I grew up in Sri Lanka in the Middle East, been to like about maybe 11 or 12 countries, and just I've my life in the last couple 30 years has just been very itinerant, and because of that, I kind of consider myself like a student of different cultures, which has allowed me to kind of go into places where someone who has maybe a monocultural experience might find it difficult to go to, and so that's the cross-culture piece, and the Christian piece is for me, culture is so fluid because it's always changing.
Yeah.
And the one constant for me growing up and even now, as I'm navigating through these constantly changing spaces and these ideas and these people who are also changing all the time, the one constant is for me the cross of Jesus. And so that the cross of Jesus, which represents the way of Jesus, which is for me kind of like this life operating system that is centered around other oriented love and wholeness, existential wholeness, and it's also animated by hope. All these different things. That kind of system really kind of puts everything into its place. Just like a phone, you have an operating system, whether it's an Android or an iPhone, and we have all clearly Team iPhone here, which is great.
Yes, sir.
We're all saved. That's really
That's
what
the truth right there.
And so, the way of Jesus for me, it's like this. It's an operating system. It just puts all these apps into their place, and kind of gives it meaning. So that's cross-culture Christian, and and I've been thinking about. There was a point where I was just thinking about like, should I change this whole thing? Because now I'm the chai guy. I can't tell you how many people will be like, yo, you're the chai guy now. This is a missed opportunity. So I tell people, chai is what I do. It's not who I am.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that.
You see?
Yeah.
Cross-culture Christian is who I am. So I want to let people know, and it's intentionally put there, and I haven't changed it just because I want to let people know that you can still be a follower of the way. You can still be a Christian. You can still be someone who says, I believe in this Jesus Christ, and still be excellent, and still provide meaning and value in other areas outside of your Christian or theological circles. And that's kind of what I want to model, because there's this kind of understanding for a lot of people who call themselves Christians, is that, okay, because I'm a Christian, that's literally all I need to speak about.
Yeah.
Like because I'm Adventist, like that's all I need to. That's all these stuff that I need to say. So anything that comes out of my mouth has to be either Adventist, has to be Christian, has to be holy, has to be righteous, has to be good, has to be all these different things. But bro, Jesus didn't do that.
Yep.
I think no,
dude,
you're great.
Dude, that's literally where we're gonna go.
Yeah.
And let's go, man.
I think my frustration really with how the general church, right? we tend to typically go for is exactly that, right? We think that that's the only way to go about it is in order to minister to someone, you have to, the first thing is you talk about Jesus with them.
Yeah.
It's all about Jesus.
And the thing, I think it's based off of this idea, right, that we are called to be in the world, but not be of the world. And so the moment you start acting like, people who are in the world or people who aren't Christian, this quote unquote secular culture, you try to think like, okay, how do I bring them out of it? Like, I feel like that's my problem with how we're going about things is our first thought is always, how can I get them to believe?
Yeah.
Versus how can I first get to know them?
Yeah.
And I think that might be a place to start in this whole thing of how do you relate to the culture and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is it's not about bringing them out of it. It's first understanding where they are currently.
So good. Man, that's so good. I think you put it so well. Paul talks about this thing called the ministry of reconciliation. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, I think. The whole concept, and he uses the phrase ministry of reconciliation. He basically says, listen, God, okay, in order to save us, what he did is he sent Jesus Christ to kind of reconcile us and God, okay? So Jesus was supposed to be this bridge. He's a reconciler between us, and he did that, through dying for us on the cross. We know that's part of the story. Then he makes this case. He says, therefore, you too are ministers of reconciliation. The moment you say that you're a follower of Jesus, you have a ministry. That's the ministry of reconciliation. So my mind, what ministry of reconciliation basically means is the posture of your being that is intentional about reducing the gap between you and God. Now, typically and historically, how we've gone about doing that is through evangelism.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what I mean by evangelism, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Bible study, this and all that stuff. Hey,
Week-long series, yeah.
They do have their place, and I'm not going to dog on some of those things, and we can have a talk about all that stuff. But what Paul was trying to get at, they didn't have evangelistic series back then in the early church. What did they have? They had their life.
Yep.
You see, they had their life, and their life was their bridge. And that's why if you look at the early church history, it's really, really fascinating. One of the reasons why the Christian church grew like gangbusters, I'm talking about within 30 years. Within 30 years, the entire globe knew about Jesus. How the heck did this happen?
There's no social media, there's no TV, there's no news.
Nothing.
No.
Okay? Now, how did this happen? Obviously, the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just assumed.
At the top, yeah.
Okay, assumed. But the other thing was, people saw how these guys lived, and they were like, so wait a second. You're not going to treat me differently because I'm a woman? Wait a second. You're not going to treat... I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. So look at this. It's like, you're not going to treat me differently because I'm a slave? Wait a second. I can come to your church even if I'm a different colored skin?
Yeah.
Because during that time, the value system was very different. And so Christians, the people looked up to Christians, were like, yo, I want that. Because Jesus came and said stuff like, your worth has value. And he talked in the parable of the sparrows. If the sparrow is this much, how much more valuable is your life? Which implies that people have dignity, which implies that they have freedom of choice. Those ideas are the reasons why Christianity grew like gangbusters, and it prevailed for literally the next 1,500 years, and also made the foundation for our modern ideas about democracy and science and things like that. And part of the reason was because people saw their lived lives.
Yeah.
Wow.
So right now, for some reason, we think that if you really want to make a connection to people, you got to use your words. Nah, bro. Like, people need to see the way of Jesus in your life first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's so hard, right? Because you go to so many churches, right? And the reality is they try to just shove Jesus down your throat, right? And that's been my experience sometimes, or many times, like, as they walk into the door and, it's not the happiest. It's like they look at you, there's that head to toe type of looking and be like, okay, yes, no, yes, good, you're okay, come in, right? And it's just, what you're saying is so true, right? And then I was just thinking right now about, Paul and what he said in 1 Corinthians 9 about this idea, like if I'm weak, then I'm going to be weak with them, right? If I need to change, I'm going to change with them, because that is what the gospel is. I want the gospel is to be full and to be with everybody, right? And no matter where they're at, no matter what the space in.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Kevin, why is it that we have shifted away from this mindset, right? If it's been so prevalent since the beginning, right? It's been so prevalent since the beginning of Christianity. How is it that we've moved away, and what can we do now better as Christians, as individuals, in order for us to move forward? Because the reality is, and this is just an Adventist thing, right? We say, oh, we're the fastest growing denomination. How many times have we not heard that before?
Yeah.
But I feel like I've been hearing that my whole life, but our church aren't popping per se, right? Our churches aren't like overflowing what people are trying to find. So how do we get back to there, man?
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm still
No, I love it.
I'm still trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
But that's a great question. I think part of the challenge is that we have equated whole person integration with doctrinal correctedness, which is basically saying, as long as you know the right information, as long as you know the right beliefs in their order, as long as you just know what you're supposed to do, then you are good. It's almost as if people are expecting that somehow having the right information will allow you to have the right transformation.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this was actually, it's kind of piggybacking on the banking model of education. Back in the day, this was kind of how people used to think about education. The main priority that we have is let's just download the information to their heads. Let's just download the right stuff. Eventually, it's going to translate. Eventually, it's going to transform into right behavior. That is not true. We know that that's not true. How? Because we see in history, people who've claimed Jesus' name are the ones who started slavery. People who've believed the right doctrines because they thought that they believed the right things, did some really crazy stuff, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons why that we've and when I talk about we, I'm talking about just the evangelical kind of Christianity
Of course.
circle here, especially in the West. But I think there's a desperate need to go back to what I call the way, followers of the way, and that's kind of how Jesus and the disciples actually talked about back in the day.
Like they weren't even called Christians; they were called followers of the way.
The way.
Like you are part of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is I gotta bring this up, Joey, because like Joey and I wrote a paper on postmodernism.
Oh no, here we
and
go
Justin
again.
always gives me crap
Here
about
we
it.
go. Dude,
but
literally all I heard about for like 3 weeks is postmodernism.
Bro,
bro.
that's
Oh, you
all-
don't even know
that's all I was researching,
postmodernism,
bro.
I know, and it's okay. It's all right, bro. We learned a lot, and it was great.
No,
but
it was-
Kevin. Imagine just 3 weeks every day after class. He's just like, oh, dude, this paper, bro. Oh my goodness, and I'm just here. I'm just working on my normal church stuff, right? And Kevin's like, nah, postmodernism, bro.
Hey, you know what? Someone once told me that information may not seem necessary at the time, but it might be the most important information you will ever receive. You might need it later on in life, bro.
Okay.
Just saying.
Wow,
Well, now
that
I-
was good. I'm not gonna lie, that was really good.
Okay, so now I need to hear it. So talk to me a little bit about how
Kevin.
does postmodernism come into all of this stuff?
So, okay, because you pointed out about the fact that we think, so as long as you have a list of rules, right, as long as you know what is right,
Yeah.
right, in terms as long as you know the right doctrine, as long as you know truth, then you will be fine. You will be able to live out your Christian life, whatever. You'll be able to minister to people in that way. But in a postmodern world, and even now, it's not even postmodern. It's something completely different now, right?
Yeah.
It's like meta modern. It's changing,
Yeah, it is.
right? Culture is always changing, but for the sake of our context and whatnot, postmodern thinking has very, very little to do with. Well, I wouldn't say it has very little to do, but it goes against this idea of following things to a T or specifically an absolute truth.
Yeah.
And so if people are turned, like, to me, you can tell me, like, okay, these are the 28 fundamental beliefs of Adventism, or you can tell me this is the proper doctrine. If I can't relate to it, it means nothing to me.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And so I think that's my frustration with how our churches and how, like, think about it. Our Bible studies are all after they're kind of structured like this. What is this? Let me go to a Bible verse and explain what this is.
Yep.
Oh, how is this possible or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go and prove, and you're constantly proof texting. Proof texting to a young person, someone who is within this culture, will go completely over their heads.
right.
And I'm seeing it through the Bible studies that I've given to some of my youth, where I'll like follow that format, and it completely goes over their head. And I'm seeing it before my eyes, and I'm like,
because they don't. The reality is they don't really care about that, you know. And it's changed. Like they do care, but they care about it in a different sense. Like they have a question, right? And then they want that we have the answer, right? The answer is in the text, but we have to go about it a whole different way. Right?
It's not about. It's not necessarily about how. It's not necessarily. Oh, we have the truth, but it's we have. This is the truth, right? Jesus is the truth.
And this is how you relate to it.
Truth isn't a concept. Truth is a person. Let me tell you about the person and what he can do in your life.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also that sometimes you're not talking to just a different person. You're talking to a different world.
Yeah.
You see, they are
That's a good
coming from a completely different mindset, worldview. And let me share this here real quick. Too often we think that, like, okay, when we come with truth, when we come with Jesus, when we go straight full frontal, and people are gonna be like, oh yes, let's go change. And then and we think that, and when they don't, then we berate ourselves, because then we're like, oh, wow, I wasn't effective. But when you have to understand that every single person you meet has a story that you have no idea about. Every single human being has a worldview that you have no idea about. And listen, the worldview that people have is their best attempt to survive. You have to start from that premise, bro.
Yeah.
Because no sane human being is going to walk around thinking, I have a completely destructive worldview and I'm going to kill everybody that I meet. Maybe one or two people. You call it psychopaths, maybe.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, every single person wants the same basic stuff. We wanna live. Survival is like pretty much like baseline need. We wanna live a life of meaning. Okay, things have to make sense. And we also want relationships. We are relational people, right? And beings. So regardless of whether you're a Christian, all this stuff, everybody has a worldview that's designed that they're using to kind of understand their world. Yeah. And more often than not, especially when you come to a Christian conversation, Adventist conversation, perhaps one of the reasons why they are not Christian or even anti-Christian is because that the worldview that they thought was going to give them life has failed them. Because of the experience in church, because of either the experience of just a perverted youth leader, or like some abuse that they've gone through in life. And so we have to understand that we have to own that, like, hey, just because you're a Christian does not mean that you're immune to critique and criticism.
Wow.
So yeah, if we start from that premise, bro, and that's kind of what I've been trying to do with my TikTok, really, where I don't really come. And if you see my TikTok, it's Cross Culture Christian, shameless plug, go find me.
Way to go, bro.
Do it, bro. Cross Culture Christian.
You saw how like easily, just, whatever.
You're a pro now.
We've been there.
Yeah, no, trust me. Kevin's a king of that,
Kevin's
bro.
a king of the plugs.
I'm all about the shameless
he's like,
plugs, bro.
Elevate
That's why
podcast,
it's shameless.
please. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
really shameless. But like, if you go see some of my videos, I talk about chai. I make chai, but then I share stories from my life. I don't prescribe. I describe. And I think I want to see more Christians do stuff like that. And again, I'm not putting this to say like I'm some sort of a standard, but I have seen people saying things like, yo, I thought I was the only one who went through that experience.
Wow.
Yo, that's crazy. Wait, so you're a pastor? But like, how though? Because like, I like the stuff that you're posting, but I like that story that was really moving. But like, how can you still like, these are the questions that I'm having, man. Because I don't go and thinking, oh yeah, you need Jesus. Let me pour chai and say, yeah, if you don't drink this, you're gonna go to hell, bro. Like, come on, that's not what I do. That's not man. It is, man. I just prescribe. I narrate. People should realize that their stories are beautiful, and that's one thing. If I want to tell Christians about this, listening, you have a superpower that literally nobody else in the world has. And you know what that superpower is? That superpower is your story.
That's right.
100%. With your ups and downs, highs and lows, that's your story. We call it in theological Adventist circles, we call it a testimony, right?
Yeah.
Let's get,
You have a
That's cool.
story.
That has its place in a different circle. But I'm talking about your story. So if you can find ways to share that and find ways to own and embrace your story,
Yeah.
because if you don't own and embrace your story, you're gonna actually use theology and Christianity to actually overcompensate because because of your own insecurities. That's a whole different sermon for another day. Then once you embrace your story, then you realize that every single person you meet also has a story, and then you start from that premise, bro. Like it becomes an adventure, a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Bro, he literally just said what we talked about earlier today. I
That's-
love it,
it's a
man.
wrap.
Dude, that is so amazing. No, yeah, that's so true, man. About the idea of that, like everybody has a story, right? And if we're not willing to share, we're not willing to tell individuals, right? Then, as Christians, what's the point? You know,
Yeah.
like what is?
I think I would also add on. I think one of the things that I follow you on TikTok. I've seen some of the comments, and I think the comment that stood out to me the most is someone, and it was not just one person. It's been multiple people where they'll say, if there were more people like you in church, I might be willing to believe. If there were more Christians like you, if there were more people that talked that way, if there were more people who were more open, if there were more people who really, at the end of the day, what they're saying is, if there were more people like Jesus, they would be willing to come. And on top of that, I would also say, Joey, I think the other thing that I see is not just being able to share our story, but learning how to listen to other people's stories too.
Yeah.
Because I think if we're gonna do this right, at the end of the day, what I saw in Jesus was his willingness to step into people's stories.
Yeah.
And being willing to hear people out, being able to, not necessarily just come and say, hey, you need this, but it was more like, hey, tell me more, and I think that aspect, in how I saw Jesus, how I've seen Jesus's ministry, the way he interacted with people. I mean, the guy I guarantee you, Jesus, the guy, if he was here today, right, think about it. He hung out with tax collectors. He hung out with drunkards. He hung out with demon-possessed people. He hung out with prostitutes. I feel like in today's world, and this would be, and when we think about this, everyone's like, no, Jesus wouldn't do this. No, come on. Jesus would be Jesus would be in the bars talking to the people. Jesus would be in the strip clubs talking to prostitutes, et cetera, right? These were the things that Jesus was willing to do because these were the people that needed him the most.
Yeah. Yeah. And at this point, someone might say, listen to this and be like, but Pastor Kev.
There's no way, bro.
There's no way.
There's no way in the world.
Or they might say things like, and this is a very valid concern. They'll hear amazing what you said, and they'll say, but if I hang out with them, does that mean that I'm agreeing with what they're saying?
Back to the whole idea of be in the world but not be of the world.
Yeah, but here's what I will say. Empathy is not endorsement. Yo.
There we go.
Empathy is not endorsement.
I love that.
Empathy, what is empathy? Empathy is basically being willing to just step into somebody else's shoes. We've talked about this, it's been a recurring theme. Just because you're willing to step into somebody else's experience does not now mean that you agree with everything that they say or do. People don't do that. We just understand that human beings are complex experiences, people. So even the people that you follow, like people that you think are influential, deep down that there are some stuff that they do that you're like, nah, man, like that's off. But you know what? Like I value you as a person. You're awesome. You're good. But for some reason, when it comes to being a Christian, it's like, unless I agree with everything that you say or do and things like that, I can't publicly just say that you're awesome.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
That's so interesting.
You're right.
It's a problem.
So,
and
can I ask you something real quick? This is just something I was thinking about, right? And this is questions that people have asked me, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, Justin Bieber, right?
Yeah.
He just released an album. I don't know if you like him or not, if you listen to his music.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So he just released an album, right? The new one. There's some good songs on there, right? And it's like, there's everything about it. You have Peaches, all these songs, right?
Yeah.
That literally, like the next weekend, he releases a Christian album, an EP, and it's amazing. Like it's awesome. Both are really, really good. What do you say to somebody's like, what should I do? Do I follow him? Like, one song he's talking about weed and he's talking about sex and he's talking about this, but then the next week he's talking about loving Jesus and that I need to find him to go to my place. How does somebody navigate that? How do they deal with that? Because what their parents are gonna say. Hey, no, I love that they put out the album, but guess what? Like, look at what he did before. That's who he is. So that doesn't matter. Like his new Christian album, even though that's how it is. Like, how does somebody navigate those territorial waters when you're thinking that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why that's so difficult for people is that it comes from, I think, a kind of a skewed view of how people experience change.
Mm-hmm.
So like people think, especially I'm talking about most Christians, think that if they are in contact with something that is not Christian, that they'll automatically be contaminated. It's kind of like osmosis, if you can remember your biology classes.
Yeah,
right?
I got
like
you, bro.
Selectively permeable membrane. I don't know how I remember
Good
that.
job,
That's crazy.
man. Your science
Wow.
teachers are gonna be proud.
That's crazy. But there's this idea that like, okay, if I'm in a secular space, I'm going to be infected with secularism.
Suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
Or so that'll translate to even songs. It's like if I'm listening to a song, it's like, ooh, cuss word. Oh my goodness, like I'm gonna be infected. Now, is there something to be said about the things that you put in your mind and your ears and your eyes and things like that? 1,000%. 1,000%. The things that you pay attention to, it literally shape your neural networks. Yeah. Okay, so let's just get that out of that's 100%. So if you don't want to watch something that's explicit and things like that, just don't watch it. Okay, it's plain and simple. But when it comes to but what you're talking about is like this next level where you're like, now what do we think about this other person? Mm-hmm. That's your question.
Yeah, that's my
what do you think about the person? My question for you to consider is think about yourself first. If someone were to look at your life, do a quick scan, and then put it on there, would they call you a Christian? Mm. I can tell you right now, if they were to do that with me, 100% no. If they see the past, the present, even in social media, I choose to put what I want to put.
Yeah.
But you don't know my story. You don't know the things that I'm
Absolutely.
struggling with. You don't know the things that they're struggling with. So the question you got to understand, first of all, you need to kind of shift your mindset thinking that people are processes. People are going through processes. People are going through moments in their lives. And just because they're saying something does not necessarily mean that they're now completely getting rid of Christianity or they're completely now becoming a demon worshiper. No, you have no idea what they're going through. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first thing that I would say. But yeah, so basically just be mindful about the things that you put in your mind and your heart. If things are going to be triggering you to watch some stuff and do certain things that you don't want to watch, just don't go there.
Yeah.
Don't go there, okay? Put the boundaries, very important. Many biblical principles about that. But also recognize that every single human being is going through a process, and literally the only person who can make that judgment call is literally God.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. It's not you. And if you're making the judgment, you are judging based on your own understanding of God, your own theology, and not based on something higher. Yeah. So again, keep those things in mind, man.
It's funny because the first thing that comes to my mind is I think how I was as a kid. My first, I was definitely that guy at some point in my conversion experience where I was like, you know what, I got to follow all this, I got to do all this. And I tried, it was like flee from everything. Yeah. Like anything that was secular, run away from it, stay away from it.
Bro, I get you, bro. My nickname was Christian Boy growing up, bro.
Yeah, no. Same. I feel you. Same here.
Exactly. Hey, we can all relate there.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was a church boy.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think at some point, I got to ask myself, why am I fearful of being in this kind of setting, right? I got to check myself at first and ask, am I scared? Is the reason why I am unwilling to relate to people in that way? And is the reason why I try to stay away from culture completely and shy away from it completely? Is it because I'm more fearful that I will give into it? Because I think it's also an issue, first of all, if you're not fully convinced, right, by this whole, that's my big thing, right? If you're not fully convinced by this, then maybe that might be an issue for why people aren't willing to, they're like, oh, you know what, I got to stay completely away from culture and all that, because the fear is if I even give into it a little, I'll just completely submerge this and let go of this. Mm-hmm. But my thing is, if you are completely about what you believe in, there's no reason for you to worry. Exactly. Because now, instead of you worrying about being contaminated, you're not worrying about that. Instead, you're so focused on being a light that nothing that won't matter, right? It's like when Jesus came into the world, right? That it says that the darkness could not overcome the light.
Yeah.
That I feel like that's where we should feel so comfortable in our faith, where we feel comfortable enough to go out and be around people that talk differently than
Absolutely.
us, believe differently than
Yeah.
us, think differently than us, and I think that's what we're actually called to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Here,
Yeah.
let me. That's so good. That's so
it's
good.
great.
Now, let me use this analogy to explain this. Okay, and hopefully this is helpful to people. Consider Jesus or the way of Jesus as an operating system. Okay, for your phone, and you think of yourself as the phone, whatever your device, right? When you have the purpose and the function of an operating system is to organize all the different apps. Okay, in a way that just makes sense, and there's cohesiveness. So that when you use one app, the other one doesn't crash, okay? That you can actually use multiple apps at the same time. So this operating system kind of like is kind of in the background. You don't see Apple coming up and saying, hey, I'm Apple. No, it's like, it's subversive, right? It's underneath, it's moving things around. I think you guys know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Too often people don't think of Jesus as an operating system. They think of Jesus as an app. Think of Jesus as kind of like, okay, well, let me download this Jesus app so I can access him once a week. I can access him once a day that week.
Yeah.
I can access him when I come on Friday night stuff, and then like I can switch off the app and I can go to my other apps, right? But no, the way of Jesus is supposed to be this kind of operating system that once you say that you're a follower of Jesus, like Kevin said, it just affects all areas of your life. And one of the central parts of that is to own this belief that you are no longer a sinner anymore. You are a son of God.
Right.
You are a daughter of God, which means that you have this new identity. And what that means is there's literally nothing outside of your relationship with God that can contaminate that. Because if you go around thinking that like, yo, I'm gonna like be contaminated, I'm gonna like be affected by this, you're actually having an extremely fragile understanding of what the gospel really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it comes down to what you really think about the gospel, right? And so, but the enemy will tell you, look, you did that. You did that thing. You really think that you're a son? Come on, you're worldly. No, you moved. You shifted address the moment you said yes to Jesus. You live in a different place, bro.
Yeah, and to Kevin, to like piggyback off what you said, like I think I've been in that space, right? It's not that I ever doubted Jesus, right? I've always, I love Jesus, but there are those moments in your life where you look at what your friends are doing, right? And you look at what's happening around, even people you probably grew up with that might be Christian, that may have grown in the church, and you're like, I want to experience that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, and I think it's that, and that's where, you have to realize you're not in this alone.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I remember there were times when I was in high school, when I was in college, right, where I look at what my friends are doing, and dude, they grew up in church, they do this, but it seems like they're having more fun than I do. Not to say that, and at the same time, at that age, you're learning about your faith.
Yeah.
You're learning like, what does Jesus mean to me, right? Yeah, you listen to it in class, right, and you go to church and listen to it on Vespers and in the sermons, but it's still something that it's very difficult for you to comprehend when everybody else is having fun, maybe drinking, or everybody else is having fun going to a party or going to a football game on Friday night, and all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And it's not easy.
It's not.
And I think that's something that we forget. Yeah, it's amazing thing, and it's our own individual faith, and eventually we get to a place where, like you've been talking about, but it is like this hard like battle within you, right? To realize, but ultimately you have to understand Jesus will overcome,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's not easy, man.
So I guess here's my question then. How do you navigate all this without being considered what we just said, that church boy or that church girl or that freaky Christian boy? Because I feel like what ends up happening in this process, obviously labels are one thing, right? But at the same time, I feel like I feel like what ends up happening is most of the time, the moment people hear Christian, they internally cringe without necessarily showing it, right? So how do you go about being a Christian without causing people to experience that cringe?
Ooh.
Whoa, man. How much time you got?
Well, so we can do a couple things. We can either kind of end where we're at right now and kind of just wrap up and then film a part 2 and continue that conversation, because I feel like that will eventually take us in a number of different directions.
Yeah, I think that's wise.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because
with
there's
you.
a lot. I think there's a lot to unpack there for
Yeah.
sure.
All right. Well, So any like
Final
concluding
thoughts,
thoughts
yeah,
on this
on-
point
on
then
this
that
point.
what we've been on.
Oof. Man, we talked about so many things, right?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, concluding thoughts I think would be that this, if you consider yourself a follower of Jesus, I think that comes with a set of privileges and also responsibilities, and I think that the extent to which you know your story, the extent to which you embrace your story, is the extent to which you can meaningfully minister and offer value to other people in their stories. And we can get into more about that in part two. But yeah, just letting you know, if you consider yourself a follower of Jesus, you are already saved. You are a son of God. You're a daughter of God. You're a
Amen.
child of the Most High King. He has purpose over your life. You have nothing to fear. Nothing can separate you from the love of God in Christ Jesus. And that's not something to boost your superiority complex. That, if anything, should allow you to take an empathetic posture towards people outside of that understanding. So something for you to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think that what's beautiful in that, it gives us each identity, and it gives us a mission. And, I think that's what's beautiful about how God steps into our story. And I think for me, like that's the next step, right? Learning each and every day, learning how to be able to step into other stories, and that I feel like that's part of what it is to be a cross-culture Christian.
Yeah,
Nice.
I love it.
Nice.
All right. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for joining us today at the Elevate podcast with Kevin and Joseph. All right. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys. See you later.
Bye-bye.